Welcome, friends, to another From the Text to the Table. My name is Reverend Dr. Andre Lewis, lead pastor here at New Faith Church, and we're excited about this episode. We're going to be talking about boundaries, and I have someone who is phenomenal. He's known across the nation, the land, the one and only Bishop Rudolph McKissick Jr. Brother, welcome.
Man, listen, out of everything I've done in New Faith, I've never done a podcast.
Oh, wow.
No, man, I'm honored to be here with you again.
We're glad to have you, Bishop. Throughout the years, you've been not only a phenomenal preacher, a phenomenal presence, but some of what you've done and imparted in me over the last 21 years has impacted me so much so that it's helped me with ministry. It's helped me with how I preach, how I look at the scriptures. And I'm just happy to have you here, man, a brother beloved.
Well, you know how I feel about New Faith, how I feel about your predecessor, Dr. Williams, and now how I feel that relationship forged our relationship. And so I'm just, honored that we've been able to forge our own brotherhood, man, and keep the relationship going.
Yes, indeed. Listen, today, I want to talk a little bit about boundaries.
Okay.
Boundaries. A lot of people are just tired.
Yeah.
And boundaries plays a significant part in how we navigate relationships, how we navigate ministry,
right,
how we navigate life. And I think it's important that we talk about just how do we create boundaries that are not only healthy, but produce a sense of peace so that we can do what God has called us to do. And that's what I want to ask you about.
I think boundaries are so important, Dre, because boundaries become our way of keeping our peace, protecting our purpose, and determining where we place people in our lives. I think it is something that keeps us from being burnt out. And a lot of people think being active is what makes you valuable, but self-care has to be a part of everything that you do. And I think a part of self-care and good health is developing those lines and limitations of what you will not cross and what you won't allow others to cross.
Yeah. What do you say to the person who feels like in ministry that they got to show up for everything and everybody, and they're not necessarily showing up for themselves?
That's a good question. I think the person who feels like they have to show up for everybody and for everything needs to reevaluate who they are to those people. Because if I have to show up for everything and for everybody, it is not authentic, it's more performative. And when I have to be performative in order for the relationship to be healthy, it's really dysfunctional.
Yeah, absolutely.
And to show up properly for the things I need to show up for, I have to take care of me. So I have to learn how to show up for me before I can show up for anyone else.
Yeah. What do you say for, I think it's interesting that you said that because you're a person who is internationally known, nationally recognized. You preach across the length and breadth of the country, and you are in high demand. Ever since I've known you, you've been in high demand. And that question, I think, is relevant to just your success and what you do in ministry. How do you stay balanced in those boundaries?
That's a good question. I haven't always. Okay. Be very honest with you. I think in my younger years, I took engagements for my ego and not for assignment. Here's what I mean. Because I wanted to feel better about me, and because I wanted to feel like I was important, I took every engagement that came along. So every day of the week almost, I was gone, almost every week of the year. It had nothing to do with assignment. It had nothing to do with me praying about going somewhere. It had everything to do with my own insecurities and wanting to feel better about myself. As I got older and as I found myself and as I got comfortable with myself, I knew I had to take care of me. And when taking care of me became more important, I learned to say no. And I think that's one of the first steps of boundaries is learning that you can say no and that you're not responsible for anybody's reaction to your no.
So, what do you say to the ambitious young preacher who is attempting to reach national, international levels of excellence across pulpits, and they're saying, "Hey, man, I want to be that. I want to be Bishop Rudolph McKissick Jr. and I want to stay within those boundaries." But how do they navigate that paradox?
There are a couple of answers. One, don't want to be me. That would be a demotion.
Okay, all right.
And I say that to people all the time. It's funny, and people think I'm, it's false humility. And I'm like, no, because to be me would be less of you,
Right.
and to be less of you means you demote your own creative purpose.
Right.
I think, secondly, I would tell a young preacher, don't reach for it. Just be authentically who you are, and let God open the doors for you, and let it happen that way. I think aspirations are a dangerous thing. When you aspire to be something, I think sometimes you don't know whether that's the enemy or whether you know that's God. Because we know one of the tricks of the enemy is to appeal to aspirations.
Right.
And so I would tell a young preacher, man, don't aspire to have your reach a certain place. Just aspire to be who God called you to be, and let God open those doors for you as they come. Because if I have to manipulate moments in order to reach a certain place, then I will eventually burn myself out.
Absolutely. That makes good sense. So you've addressed somewhat this answer of being able to say no. Mm-hmm. So what are some things you think when it comes to boundaries, not just for the preacher, but for the layperson, that we need to unlearn?
Oh, that's so funny. Last week's lesson in our theology and therapy was entitled Unlearning Yourself. That's exactly what I talked about last week. I think, you have to learn to say no to things that tempt you away from godly purpose and character.
Okay.
And all of those things aren't necessarily sin. They can be good things that are distractions. So I think you have to learn how to say no to things that pull you away from purpose, where God has planted you, assignment God has given you, whether that's family, whether that's ministry, whether that's job, and personal health. You've got to have those priorities in place, and then learn to say no to the things that can become distractions that may not necessarily be sins.
Right.
Right? Then I think you also have to learn how to say no to people who pull on you for their own personal reasons and agendas, transactional relationships, right? You have to learn how to say no to people, as well as no to those other distractions. You got to learn how to say no to you.
Yeah.
Because there are some things you want sometimes that you have to learn how to say no or not yet, so that you can take care of yourself. You only learn those boundaries when you discipline yourself to say no. And that discipline doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
It comes from repeating that action, and I think determining your priorities.
When did you? I'm gonna pose another question, but I'm gonna pose it this way.
See, when you smile like that, I don't worry.
What do you do with availability versus assignment?
Oh,
Right? Because we're always, I think, between this idea of I'm available, but it's not necessarily my assignment. So how do we navigate that within a boundary?
Ooh. I think one, prayer.
Okay.
Definitely prayer. Um, I have learned, as I told you earlier, man, I took everything. It could be a Presbyterian church. I'm taking everything comes my way, right? Now though, I know who I am. I know not only the gift God has given me, but I know who God has called me to preach to. Every crowd is not my crowd. Every crowd, this is gonna sound really bad, but it's your podcast, so you'll get in trouble. I don't want to go places now where I gotta water down what God has given me.
Yeah.
Those kind of things begin to determine, for me, availability or assignment. Somebody may call me to come do something, and I may know that's not my wheelhouse, right? Or I know, that audience, that's not their listening ear is not engaged to my kind of voice. So now I know how to say no when I know I was only going to say yes because I had the date open. Now I pray about assignments before I take them, unless it's new faith.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Keep that spirit. Yeah. So I think that's a phenomenal answer. I think it will help a lot of preachers, practitioners, to navigate, how to deal with assignment and availability. Let me ask you this then. So,
But guys, can I say one thing?
yes, sir.
I read this, it's just this morning in my devotional. My devotional was on Samson, and I think this will help. And this struck me, man, when this author said about Samson, what happened to him was he fell in love with his abilities and forgot about his accountability. And now sometimes you can fall so in love with your ability that you lose sight of your accountability. And I think when it comes to availability and assignment, if you're in love with your ability, you're going to always be available. But if you know and understand you are accountable for the gift God has given you, you will be prayerful about taking assignments.
That's good. That's good. That's going to help somebody.
Yeah.
So we've talked about assignment, availability, boundaries, a season in your life when you accepted everything and had to really, narrow that down to who you are,
Right.
and the places that you were going. Let's talk about cost.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
What did it cost you? Because a lot of times I don't think people assess the cost of not having boundaries and what it does to your family, what it does to you internally, and what it does to your name, all of the different things that go along with that.
So I can be as transparent as I want.
Be transparent, just don't cuss.
Okay, won't do that. I'll hold that for now. It almost cost me everything.
Wow.
Because I say this in my church a lot. I lived with immense insecurities as a young preacher, probably up until in my 40s or so, to be honest with you. So because I went and had no boundaries, I had no boundaries. You get that?
I do.
I had no boundaries. So because I had no boundaries, it affected my marriage. My marriage was at a place where I had a wife who said she didn't want to be married to me anymore.
Right.
I was never home. As we got into adulthood, my children got into adulthood and we started doing family therapy, I discovered how my absence hurt my relationship with my children. I wasn't pastoring my church. I was the guest preacher on Sunday, but I wasn't pastoring my church. So, that scripture that says count the cost, that's for real, man. You got to count the cost and you got to determine what your real priorities are and never sacrifice your family on the altar of ministry. If you have family, after God, that's got to be your priority.
Yeah.
Ministry comes after that.
Absolutely.
And then you maintain that priority. And then you develop the discipline to not let anything be a yes that becomes a threat to that order.
Yeah.
Because it almost cost me my life. And that's the honest truth.
Yeah.
You know.
I've heard throughout I'm 52 now. When I met you, I was 31.
Man, we get old.
Yeah. And so when I first came on the scene, I started preaching late, like 27. And one of the things that I often heard, which I've discovered is a lie, is that if you take care of God's business, you heard it too. Take care of yours. And I have seen people sacrifice a lot.
Yes.
Behind that statement that our predecessors kind of tried to ingrain in us. Yeah. And when we pulled away from that mentality,
Right.
what ended up happening is that it caused a lot of discord between what they thought modern preaching was and what they thought traditional preaching was. Our history. Right. Say a word or two about that. You're a PK kid. Talk to us about it.
I'm a PK kid, but I was blessed with a great model because I grew up like you. I was in sports, right? All the way through high school. I didn't play college. You played college. I didn't play college, but all the way through high school, I ran track, played football, played basketball, right? My dad never missed a track meet, a football game, basketball game. So I grew up with a father who made sure that he took care of his business as well as God's business.
Yeah.
I was blessed with that model, even though I heard that other a lot. I was blessed with the model to observe a father who took care of his business. You know what I mean? I think there are so many things we heard of old
Yeah.
that just weren't true
Yeah.
and will not even work in this modern day. And I think any preacher, any person that goes by that mantra, that if I take care of God's business, he's going to take care of mine, you're going to fool yourself.
Yeah.
Because God gives us the responsibility of stewardship over our life.
Absolutely.
You got to steward your life. And a part of stewarding your life is how you steward God's business. Because some of the stuff we do for God is not God's business for us. It's us being in the business about God.
Yeah.
But not necessarily God's business for us.
So when we transition, this conversation about boundaries, right? And we start talking about traditional models of ministry versus modern contemporary models of ministry. There's a word that is impregnated into our culture now that is constantly being birthed in new ways. It is the word access. And now I think you hear this talk about guarding your access. You hear this talk about who do you allow to come into your circle, who do you connect with, who do you partner with. What have you learned about that word access when it comes to boundaries?
So much. Because I gave everybody access. Because we could do 5 podcasts on the mistakes I made with my insecurities.
Wow.
That's just the honest truth. So because I was so insecure, not only did I give everybody access, I wanted access to everybody because I wanted to know everybody's life. I wanted to know everybody's business. I wanted everybody, you have to guard. I think guarding access to you is a tantamount boundary and priority. Everybody, I'm reminded of Jesus, we're in Holy Week, in Gethsemane, right? It's really interesting when Jesus goes into Gethsemane, he tells 9, y'all stay here. He takes 3 with him. Then he tells those 3, y'all stay here. Then he goes you have to determine that you have the right to place people where they belong. Absolutely. In your life. Everybody can't handle all access to you. Everybody can't handle access to your humanity, access to your transparency. They can't handle that. And I think you have to become wise enough to know not only who can handle every part of who you are, but who can help you manage those parts of who you are. There are some people you'll give access to that will affirm the things you're weak to, as opposed to check you and challenge you and cover you at the same time. Yeah. You got to determine who fits where, why they fit where, and allow access based on what's best for that.
So once again, I got another question. So how do you deal with the pressure of proximity? I'm giving you preaching stuff. I really am.
You are.
Well, I really am.
I think you deal with the pressure of proximity by something I said early on, and that is not making yourself responsible for people's reaction to your boundaries.
Okay.
You have to develop, I don't care. You have to develop, that I'm not called to babysit your insecurities or your reactions to me either not giving you access or me cutting off your access. I think you've got to be so determined to be mentally healthy, emotionally healthy, spiritually healthy, and physically healthy, that you just develop that I don't care attitude, about how people react to proximity. And if you get burned enough from people who couldn't handle your proximity, it'll change.
It'll change. Just to kind of navigate so we've covered a lot, and I think we've given our audience a tremendous amount of information and insight from your areas of ministry. Let me ask in a concluding, kind of quick fire questioning, if you will. What did Jesus understand about boundaries that we ignored?
Ooh. See, you should send me these questions. What did Jesus understand about boundaries that we ignored? I think Jesus understood his humanity. I go back to the garden. Jesus knew he was going to get by himself and say, hey, God, hey, Father, I don't want to do this. And I think Jesus understood that even those called to be connected to you can only see a certain part of you.
Absolutely.
I think he knows that we haven't learned yet.
Yeah.
We think that there's always at least one somebody that we need to vet it to. And I think what Jesus shows us is sometimes the person you need to vent to is God by yourself.
I was still Jesus.
Yes, all of my tribe.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I think that's one thing.
Okay. I think that's good. I think, in this season of everybody with access, proximity, and this culture of availability and knowing what your assignment is, and really trying to, create your own branding, if you would, that sometimes that model for ministry makes us give everybody all access cards to our lives.
And social media. And the word you use, brand. Everybody is trying to create a brand for themselves. So now we give people access to all of our vulnerable moments through our posts.
Yeah.
Then, because we have a different church generation now, you got the preacher who's trying to be so accessible, And I think in a way, we've lost the reverential regard we need to teach people to have for us as men and women of God.
Absolutely.
There is no mysterium tremendum to the preacher anymore.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a beautiful segue to a work that you have created.
Yes.
And I think it gives us insight to this wonderful book that you have, a new book, a new work, When the Word Walks.
Yeah.
We're talking about preaching, we're talking about teaching. You pour so much of yourself into that book.
Yeah, yeah.
And, I would love for you to just give us some insight just on the performative nature of preaching.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting. What birthed that book were two things from my life's journey. One was I was an opera major in undergrad school, right? So I've always been a performer. From the earliest of time through high school doing musicals. But then when I got to Florida State, and then even my last year at JU, I was always performing in operas. Then when I got to Virginia Union, my homiletics professor, Dr. Miles Jerome Jones, had this phrase he would always use: you've got to make the words walk up off the page. And so as I was thinking about that, and the Lord had impressed upon me, because everybody's always saying, you need to write, you need to write. You need to write, because I would tell people how I exegete, and it was related to my opera. That's a chapter in the book on how I block the text. His words came back to me about making the words walk, and the Holy Spirit said to me, you got to perform. So at first I was like, nah, they're not going to get that. They're going to think, you're a performer. But for me, the performative nature of preaching has to do less with your exegesis, less with your writing skill, and more with your communicative skills. How do I preach this in such a way that it communicates and it engages? Okay. And I think that's where a lot of preachers miss, where they don't know how to perform the preaching. And by perform, I mean engage it in such a way. So in the book, I do a whole chapter on vocality. How do you use your voice?
Right.
And I take an opera song from the Messiah, and I break it down how you should sing it. Then I take a scripture, how you should read that. Your voice has everything to do with how you perform a sermon. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Because for me, there's a difference in writing a sermon. I had professors, I shouldn't say this, but I did, and we probably all did, who could teach preaching, but couldn't preach their way out of a wet paper bag.
Yeah.
Right? I have heard sermons from preachers that were great in content and substance, but didn't come across. Because you have to learn how to be performative. Think about a surgeon for a minute, right? A surgeon does what? Performs surgery. They're not performing, but their performance is the act of the activity of their craft. And that's what that whole book is about. How do I perform the word of God? So it's not, becoming a performer with cliches and clickbait phrases and that kind of thing. It's how do I engage my entire being, my entire body, my voice, my eyes, everything, so that the listening ear of the congregation is engaged and see themselves in the text.
The main provocation, if you would, for the book is the word, or the optic is performative. Yes. Right?
Yes.
And what do you say, because there's a part of the book that you talk about that person, that preacher, that proclaimer who is challenged with making their preaching not only a spectacle, but they fear the idea of being seen as they're putting on an act. What do you say to them when you start talking about being performative, if you would?
I think it's a difference in content and knowing assignment. In other words, if I'm there to tilt people Godward, then I can't become a spectacle. My assignment is to tilt them Godward. I have to understand every congregation has a listening ear. Every person in that congregation has a listening ear. There's a certain way they hear. And so performative can be contextual. Here's what I mean. The way I preach a sermon at New Faith, I may preach that very differently at, let me just make up,
Haynes.
yeah. I may then take that same sermon and I may preach it very differently at an AME church.
Absolutely.
Or a Presbyterian church. Same sermon. But because I know the listening ear of that context, each time I change it, I'm performing it. Because performing is not about the act. Performing is about the engagement.
Okay.
So if I don't see myself as an actor, but see myself responsible for being a communicator,
Okay.
communicating is the performative nature. Acting makes you a performer.
So if I pick your book up and or I recommend it to our preachers and I say, hey, we're going to go through a study on this book that Dr. McKissick has written, in your own words, talk to me about what it means to make the word walk.
I think it is opening yourself up theologically. I do a whole piece in the book on not trying to impose theology on a text,
Okay.
but letting your theology be derived from when you read the text.
Okay.
I think it's being open to theology. It's being open to energy. It's being open to learning how to use your voice. It's being open to being discerning about the context and the congregation and knowing what kind of communicative vocal display will help them hear this sermon.
Okay.
More than me just preaching this sermon.
So you talk about embodiment.
Yes.
So for you then, it sounds like you embody the message
You have to.
internally.
You have to. It has to preach to you. And it has to be in you before you can put it in anybody else.
Okay.
And because one of the things I do, and I talk about it in the book, and I still to this day, I did it for the sermon I'm doing tonight. I literally sit and read through it, not read it. I act it out. And by that, I don't mean I get behind a podium, right? But I read every phrase and I act out how this should sound. What vocal emphasis should go on this phrase? What needs to be soft right here? How do I need to speak this to get it across? That's embodying it.
What do you say to the manuscript preacher who, because of course there's a whole nother argument about manuscript, extemporaneous foolishness. Yeah. What do you say to the manuscript preacher who is trying to embody what you're teaching in your book? I think Billy Curtis does a phenomenal job at doing it.
Yes.
But I've also seen you do it. And so you use manuscript and what your exhortation. So talk to us a little bit about that.
I think you have to, it's part of embodiment.
Yeah.
But it's also a part, I talk about this in the book, it's also a part, when I was in college, in my opera degree, there was a whole class we had to take on eye contact and on how being so familiar with the music, right? That there would be pieces of it you would know, that you could lift your eyes up,
Yeah.
but you would know when you go back down where you were going to land.
Okay.
I think you have to train your eye contact
Absolutely.
when it comes to being I'm a manuscript preacher.
Yeah.
Like you, extemporaneous sometimes.
Yeah.
But if I'm preaching a sermon for the first time, it's going to be strictly manuscript.
Absolutely.
But you have to learn, you have to have embodied that sermon and the manuscript so well that you know how to lift your eyes up so you're not beholden to that scripture or to that manuscript.
Absolutely.
If you never have eye contact, you'll never be performative. Because if you don't have eye contact, you're never going to engage them.
Yeah.
And a part of performative preaching is engaging the audience so that they hear it and see it. So you just got to get that sermon in you and not be afraid. You know, just you got to trust yourself.
You got to trust yourself. That's good. Listen, give us a 30-second advertisement for us getting this book. 30 seconds.
I need my daughter on this. If you want a book that can help you understand how to preach the sermon, not necessarily just put it together, but if you want a book that can help you understand how to use the voice God has given you and how to click with the congregation you're preaching to, this is the best book for it.
Praise God. Listen, friends, this has been From the Text to the Table. I'm Dr. Andre Lewis, and we've had the phenomenal Bishop Rudolph McKissick Jr., who has shared with us today on boundaries and also has shared with us on his latest book, When the Word Walks. It's a phenomenal book. I'm going to get it. Matter of fact, he told me he got a book for me with my name.
Sealed, delivered, this is.
And I'm looking forward to that. Listen, you need to hear this episode again here at From the Text to the Table with Bishop Rudolph McKissick Jr., all the way from Jacksonville, Florida. Bishop, thank you again for coming.
Thank you, man. Always honored.
Thank you. Blessings. Have a wonderful day.